So in this segment, we're going to ask the question: are the media going to hold Reform UK accountable? And I've got a feeling they just won't. Strong feeling they're going to fall into the trap of just platforming Farage constantly. I mean, they've done that for over a decade now. So this is Mattless talking about how the Reform Party are not a new party.
Goes to the heart of the problem now, and it is this: that we all treat Reform and their success and their newfound sort of muscularity, we treat them as if they're a new party, and they very much aren't. You know, they are UKIP into Brexit, into Leave, into Reform, with the same leader, the same clothes, the same rhetoric. And I think that this is something that the government would actually do well to remember. You know, if people are sort of saying, well, oh, it's a scream of pain and they're going to provide the answers and they're the ones that are now sort of responding to the fact that we hate the main party politics, Britain is broken. Well, who broke it? You know, it was Farage's Brexit ideas and his Leave campaign. That shrank the economy by 5%. We've got higher legal immigration now than when we were in the EU. We've got a
That was a result of Brexit because it changed the type of immigration we had. You know, people looking for longer term stay. You know, EU workers would come and go really, because they had free movement and access. They wouldn't need a visa. I think some countries needed like minor amounts of paperwork, which was like easy for them to get. But you know, people are looking to move here longer term, whereas EU workers had the whole of the EU to choose from, especially seasonal workers.
15% slump in trade. We've got a £40 billion lost tax revenue. I think it's really important that we don't frame Reform as this sort of brand new creation of the last 12 months. It isn't.
It's too late. I think I think they've been given too much leeway, too much airtime. With Labour floundering as much as they are, you know, Reform are going to say, Labour Party say we're going to cut immigration. The Reform Party are going to say we're going to do like a one in, one out policy or some nonsense, which they proposed before.
It is the same party that has done so much damage under a different name to this country already.
I do think it's fascinating that, we were talking at the end of last week about the upcoming Australian elections. Labour wins a landslide against a populist Conservative leader, Peter Dutton. We were in Canada at the beginning of last week when, Mark Carney beats Pierre Poilievre, another populist politician.
It's because they stood up against Trump. That's why. You know, they actively made Trump a massive campaigning point for them, whereas the leaders we have in this country just all try and agree with him and placate him.
Britain, we've gone a different way, where we've had elections and the populist politician in the shape of Nigel Farage has done extremely well. I mean, I kind of wonder...
Is he done? He's done well. It was council elections for start. You're comparing two general elections to a council election, which doesn't really make sense at all. We had the populist guy run last year, literally less than a year ago, and he won 4 seats.
Whether there will be a greater scrutiny now. That some of the...
You should have been doing that, mate. Honestly, there should have been a greater scrutiny on them from the start. There should have been much more scrutiny on them from the start. And this is what I mean. Like, you wondering this. Like, this is your job. Literally, your job is to hold people accountable. People in the power accountable. That's why you exist.
The decisions. When he was campaigning for Brexit, it was a campaign against Brexit which got popular support and people bought into it. They will be running councils now. They will be running council services now. And whether that brings a degree more accountability to them, and we can see, well, okay, we've seen what you've done, where in a sense, Farage can argue, well, we're kind of these political neophytes and we've never really run anything.
That's not an excuse. Being new to something is not an excuse. You wanted to be in charge of the council. You know how councils operate. That's on you if you can't run it properly.
Yeah, I mean, how many surgeries has Farage held since he became the Clacton MP?
Being an MP is not a mystery to people. It's very public. Being a councillor is the same thing. And this, I mean, like, they talk about, more scrutiny is needed on Reform UK's plans. Is like that again. That's your job to do that.
So asked her about, she said that tents were an appropriate remedy for illegal migration. If it's good enough in France, it's good enough here. I did ask her whether or not she thought that would include, if you've got unaccompanied children, whether they should be in tents, and she basically said, yeah. Which I'm not sure. I don't know how Lincolnshire might feel about that.
I don't know how Lincolnshire might feel about that. I also don't know how Reform UK necessarily will feel about that, because you've got this strange thing that happens when you're a new political party, where when somebody says something,
Again, they're not a new political party. It's just a rebrand. That's all this is.
you then are like, oh, hang on, is that party policy?
And she did say that wasn't party policy.
No,
she did say in
she
fairness
did,
to her,
and Zia Yusuf, the chairman, was asked about it as well this morning, and he sort of said, well, you know, we're going to put out some things on immigration.
Well, surely you say to him, like, how come your mayor's saying this? If it's not party policy, then surely you rein it in. How are the public supposed to know what Reform Party's policy is on this specific issue if you guys don't know what it is?
So it doesn't sound like that is party policy.
because as I said to her,
working...
in France, they actually, like, having been there lots of times and reported from lots of times, locals hate the tents. That's why the French police confiscate them, because it's just alongside the road and it looks terrible, and it's, you know, obviously it's just horrible for all sorts of reasons. So it's not something that the French are sort of saying, well, this works over here, you know, give it a go in Spalding.
Yeah, but it's interesting because basically
Shouts out Spalding.
lots of people in Labour HQ now say, and lots of people generally are basically now saying, okay, well, now is the time that Reform UK are going to get loads of scrutiny. So we're going to see that.
It's not going to happen. I guarantee it's not. Like Matlis and Soper will do it because they're ideologically against reform. What you'll have is a load of people platforming reform, Farage spouting absolute nonsense, and then being like, yes, interesting, moving on. That's what's going to happen, and you know, I'll show you evidence of that in a minute. To be honest with you, of that kind of stuff going on. But all you're going to see is his ideas being platformed more and being championed more
at a local level. We're gonna, and you know, the government are going to put out these big ad vans on the NHS, and Nigel Farage's comments about that, and that is how they're going to try and counter it. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but I think there is a feeling that what is needed at this next stage in the electoral cycle is more scrutiny on reform.
I don't see it happening, honestly. Like, you know, the plans, you know, like if they wanted to do that, and maybe they do it in the longer clip, but they literally the manifesto's been out for ages. They could have questioned him on anything there. They chose not to. And he's had Tyson a few times, and this is Trevor Phillips.
According to the United Nations, there are more people living outside the country of their birth than at any time in human history. The best estimates say that globally there are nearly 300 million immigrants and counting. Across the West, politics has become a battle between those who believe that the economy needs the skills and vigours that immigrants can bring, and those convinced that whatever incomers add to prosperity is dwarfed by what they consume.
Dwarfed by what they consume? Like what are they consuming that costs so much when we know it's a net benefit to people? Makes no sense.
And to voters, many issues can be seen as a kind of migration equation. Too many immigrants, too few homes. Foreign workers, falling wages. More health tourists, fewer hospital beds. Whether justified or not.
So look, you see what I'm saying? That literally platforming is language. Whether justified or not, there's no pushback on the positive sides of what immigration brings. Doing jobs people don't want to do, for a start. You know, in terms of adding culture, adding, you know, a better food to society. Nothing like that either. Enabling that the country actually does get moving with certain infrastructure projects and other things, because we don't have the expertise here. We don't have, you know, enough people in the NHS. Things like that. You know, the idea that immigrants are taking up hospital beds is not true, because typically people who immigrate here are younger, more healthy people. The fact that they are net contributors to the economy is not mentioned here either. That's what I'm saying. Like they will champion this man to the nth degree.
These are the stories repeated in GP surgeries, in workplaces,
in GP surgeries, mate. I think what they're talking about is in GP surgeries. I'm not talking to anyone apart from the receptionist and the GP, because I ain't talking to someone who might have an illness. Who's saying this?
School gate. And for many years, both politicians...
Oh, mate. Oh, my son almost didn't get a school place here because of some immigrant. Man. What are you talking about, my G? Like, bro, you mentioned these things specifically because you wanted to discuss them. That's why.
And the media found it hard to talk about migration without finger-pointing and name-calling.
My guy, like, no... we've been talking about this for like 15 years now. About 15 years we've been discussing immigration, arguably for longer. Arguably since the EU added more countries. That's why we've been discussing it without finger pointing and everything. Of course, if you bring up these topics in a negative way, there's going to be finger pointing.
But this week it looks as though the taboo might be broken. This morning, let's see.
We saw a debate with Farage versus Nick Clegg where he said all of Romania could be here by tea time. So this idea that, you know, it was a taboo or whatever, like, this is what got Brexit over the line. This is what channeled Brexit really was, is about immigration. This is the most ridiculous statements from a guy who works for Sky News, who I think took over Beth Rigby's show. Or not Beth Rigby, sorry, Sophie Ridge's show. Just absolute nonsense. And this is why I think Reform will get platformed really well. Someone calling him Uncle Trev, he's an unk. Honestly, I just, wow. You know, this is what scares me the most, guys. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.